My coffee shattered. The metallic taste of fear burned my tongue. I'd raised him 43 years. He was kissing a 78-year-old heiress. I had $480,000 hidden. I would spend it all to stop him. But there was one truth nobody suspected. Nusa, I swear I saw your son leaving a motel with a much older woman. My neighbor's words exploded in the afternoon silence of my front porch. The coffee cup trembled between my fingers as the Denver sun burned the small garden I'd tended for 30 years. And in that moment, staring at Mrs. Patterson's concerned face, I made a decision that would save a life. Because what my son Caio didn't know, what nobody in our quiet neighborhood could imagine, is that I had $480,000 hidden in 3 different accounts, and I was about to use every penny to stop him from becoming a murderer. My name is Nusa Santos. I'm 69 years old, and this is the story of how a volunteer library teacher discovered her own son was planning to kill an innocent woman for money. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't knock on your door and announce itself. It slips in through cracks you didn't know existed, wearing the face of someone you trust completely. For 43 years, I raised Caio alone after his father died in that horrible truck accident on I-25. I worked double shifts at the library, volunteered at the community center, and saved every penny so my boy could have a better life than mine. I'm so grateful you're here listening to this story. If you've ever felt that sick feeling in your stomach when someone you love disappoints you, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? I want to know how far these stories of family betrayal are reaching. While I tell you what happened next, if you could subscribe to the channel, it would help me so much. Now let me tell you exactly what I discovered when I hired that private detective. Mrs. Patterson stood on my porch that Tuesday afternoon, shifting her weight from foot to foot like she was carrying a secret too heavy for her small frame. Her silver hair was perfectly curled as always, but her eyes held something I'd never seen before, fear mixed with pity. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, she continued, but I've seen him 3 times now, always with the same woman. She's got white hair, expensive clothes, drives a silver Mercedes. I thought maybe he was helping her with something, but what? The words came out sharper than I intended. The way he was touching her, Nusa. The way he kissed her neck when he thought nobody was looking. That's not how a son kisses his mother. The coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering against the concrete steps. Brown liquid spread like a stain of truth I didn't want to face. Caio had been coming to Sunday dinner for months, bringing Livia, talking about their future, their plans to buy a bigger house. He seemed happy. They seemed perfect. Are you sure it was Caio? I asked, though my heart already knew the answer. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. Same blue Toyota, same license plate. I'm sorry, honey. I debated whether to tell you, but if it were my son... That night, after she left, I sat in my living room, staring at the family photos covering the mantel. Caio at his high school graduation. Caio and Livia on their wedding day. Caio holding his first paycheck from the insurance company. In every picture, he was smiling that same innocent smile that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. But now that smile looked different, calculated, like a mask he'd been wearing for years. I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I found myself in the kitchen, making another cup of coffee with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The silence of the house felt heavy, pregnant with questions I was afraid to answer. Who was this woman? Why was Caio seeing her? And most importantly, what was he hiding from me and Livia? By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I needed to know the truth. At 9 a.m. sharp, I called Benson Investigations, a small detective agency I'd found in the Yellow Pages. The voice that answered was gravelly, professional, tinged with the kind of patience that comes from hearing lies all day long. Benson speaking. Mr. Benson, my name is Nusa Santos. I need someone to follow my son. There was a pause. Ma'am, are you sure about this? Once you know something, you can't unknow it. His words hung in the air like a warning I should have heeded. I'm sure. All right, let's meet. 2 hours later, I sat across from Detective James Benson in a small cafe on Colfax Avenue. He was exactly what I'd expected. A weathered man in his 60s with tired eyes and calloused hands wrapped around a black coffee cup. Former Denver police, he'd told me over the phone. 25 years on the force before starting his own business. Tell me about your son, he said, without preamble. Kaio is 43. He sells insurance. He's married to a wonderful girl named Livia. They live about 10 minutes from me. I paused, searching for the right words. Until yesterday, I would have told you he was the most honest man I knew. Benson nodded, making notes in a small pad. And what made you change your mind? I told him about Mrs. Patterson, about the mysterious woman, about the sick feeling in my stomach that something was terribly wrong. He listened without judgment, occasionally asking for details. Kaio's schedule, his car, his usual haunts. This will cost you $75 a day plus expenses, he said finally. And Mrs. Santos, if your son is having an affair, are you prepared for what that might mean for your family? I thought about Livia, sweet Livia, who called me every week and brought me homemade soup when I had the flu. I thought about the grandchildren I'd been hoping for, the Sunday dinners that might never be the same. I'm prepared, I lied. I'll start tomorrow. That was Wednesday. By Friday, my world had collapsed. Benson called me at 2:17 p.m. I remember the exact time because I was helping young Tommy Richardson with his reading when my phone buzzed. The boy was struggling with a picture book about farm animals, sounding out each word with the concentration of someone solving a puzzle. Mrs. Santos, we need to meet, now. The urgency in his voice made my blood freeze. Did you find something? More than I expected. Can you come to my office in an hour? I left the library in the middle of my shift, something I'd never done in 20 years of volunteering. The drive to Benson's office felt like the longest 45 minutes of my life. Every red light was an eternity. Every mile stretched like a year. His office was small, cluttered with filing cabinets and coffee-stained papers. But what dominated the room was a large corkboard covered with photographs. As I got closer, my knees nearly gave out. There was my son, in living color, holding hands with an elderly woman outside a restaurant, helping her into a car, kissing her cheek in the parking lot of a grocery store, and in one photo that made my stomach lurch, kissing her on the lips in front of what looked like a jewelry store. Her name is Hortense Miller, Benson said quietly. She's 78 years old, a widow, lives alone in a mansion in the Capitol Hill area. She's worth approximately $4.8 million. The number hit me like a physical blow. $4.8 million. How do you know all this? Public records, property taxes. She inherited most of it from her late husband, who owned several successful restaurants. No children, no close family. He paused, studying my face. Mrs. Santos, I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you think your son is capable of fraud? The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire I could smell but couldn't see. What kind of fraud? Benson pulled out another folder. Yesterday, I followed Kaio to the offices of Martinez and Associates, a law firm downtown. He was there for 45 minutes. When he left, I had a contact check what kind of business they handle. And elder law, wills, estate planning, powers of attorney. The room started spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair so hard my knuckles went white. Are you saying he's trying to... I'm saying your son presented himself as Mrs. Miller's affectionate representative, a legal term that can give someone power over an elderly person's affairs. He's also purchased an engagement ring. Benson slid a receipt across the desk. Tiffany & Co., $12,000 for a platinum diamond ring. He's planning to marry her, I whispered. It appears so. And Mrs. Santos, there's one more thing. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I managed to get close enough to their conversations yesterday. Your son was asking very detailed questions about her medications. The world tilted on its axis. My son, my baby boy who used to cry when we had to put mousetraps in the basement because he didn't want to hurt anything, was planning to murder an innocent woman for her money. What kind of questions? My voice sounded like it was coming from someone else. Dosages, side effects. What happens if someone takes too much of a heart medication? Benson's eyes were full of sympathy. Mrs. Santos, I think your son is planning to kill Mrs. Miller. I don't remember leaving his office. I don't remember driving home. The next thing I knew, I was sitting in my kitchen, staring at my hands, wondering how the son I'd raised could become someone I didn't recognize. But as the shock wore off, something else took its place. Something cold and determined and absolutely furious. Because for 43 years, I'd protected that boy from every consequence, every mistake, every hard truth. I'd given him everything I had, including my belief that he was good. Now I was going to protect someone else from him, and I was going to use the one thing he didn't know I had, the $480,000 inheritance from my brother Roberto that I'd been saving for Caio's future. Ironic, isn't it? The money I'd planned to give him was about to destroy his life. But as I sat there in the growing darkness of my kitchen, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. I didn't care. The son I'd loved was already gone. Now I had to stop the monster he'd become. That Friday night, I made a decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life. I was going to spy on my own son. At 6 a.m. Saturday morning, I parked my old Honda 3 blocks from Hortense Miller's mansion on 12th Avenue. The house was everything Benson had described. A 3-story Victorian, painted pale yellow with white trim, surrounded by mature oak trees and a wrought iron fence that probably cost more than I made in 2 years volunteering at the library. I waited. At 8:30 a.m., Caio's blue Toyota pulled into her circular driveway. I watched through binoculars as he got out, straightened his tie, and walked to the front door carrying a small paper bag from the pharmacy and a bouquet of white roses. The door opened, and there she was. Hortense Miller looked exactly like what she was, a wealthy widow trying to hold on to her dignity. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her pale blue cardigan probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and she moved with the careful steps of someone whose bones had grown fragile with age. But what made my stomach turn was how she looked at my son. Her face lit up like Christmas morning when she saw him. She actually clapped her hands together like a schoolgirl. This woman was genuinely, completely in love with him, and he was planning to kill her. I watched them embrace on her front porch. Caio kissed her forehead gently, said something that made her laugh, and guided her inside with his hand on the small of her back. To anyone watching, he looked like the perfect gentleman caller. But I knew better. I'd raised him. I knew his tells. The way he tilted his head slightly when he was lying. The way his left hand fidgeted when he was nervous. And from where I sat, even across the street, I could see both. For 3 hours, I sat in that car waiting for him to come out. When he finally did, at 11:45 a.m., he was carrying a small overnight bag and had changed into more casual clothes. Hortense walked him to his car, moving slowly but with obvious effort to keep up with his longer stride. She was trying so hard to please him that it broke my heart. As Caio drove away, I made my second decision of the day. I was going to talk to her. I parked in front of her house and walked up the stone pathway, my heart pounding so hard I was sure the neighbors could hear it. The doorbell played a classical melody that echoed through what sounded like a very large house. Hortense opened the door, wearing the same hopeful expression she'd had for Caio, but when she saw me, confusion flickered across her features. "Yes? Can I help you?" "Mrs. Miller, my name is Nusa Santos. I'm Caio's mother." Her face transformed instantly. The confusion melted into pure joy, and she actually reached out to take my hands in hers. "Oh my goodness, Nusa, Caio talks about you constantly. Please, please come in." Her house was like a museum. Antique furniture, original oil paintings, Persian rugs that looked older than the state of Colorado. But what struck me most was how lonely it felt, despite all the luxury. Family photos covered every surface, but they were all old. Her late husband, people who were clearly deceased relatives, grandchildren who lived too far away to visit often. "Would you like some coffee? Tea? I just made fresh scones." Hortense's excitement was painful to watch. She was so hungry for connection that she would have invited a complete stranger in for conversation. "Coffee would be lovely, thank you." As she bustled around her enormous kitchen, chattering about Caio like a teenager with her first crush, I realized the full scope of what my son was doing. This wasn't just about money. He was exploiting this woman's loneliness, her desperate need for companionship in her final years. "He's such a remarkable young man," Hortense said, pouring coffee from a silver service that probably cost more than my car. "So attentive, so caring. Do you know he's been helping me organize my medications? I get so confused with all the different pills, but Caio has such a system." Ice water flooded my veins. "What kind of system?" "Oh, he sorts them into those little weekly containers, you know? Makes sure I take the right amounts at the right times." My heart medication especially. He's very careful about that. Says too much could be dangerous. My hands started shaking so badly, I had to set down my coffee cup. Mrs. Miller, how long have you and Caio been seeing each other? Her cheeks turned pink. 6 months now. We met at the farmer's market downtown. I dropped my purse, and he helped me pick everything up. Such a gentleman. We started talking, and he offered to drive me home because my arthritis was bothering me that day. 6 months. For 6 months, my son had been cultivating this relationship, building trust, positioning himself as her savior. The calculation involved made me nauseous. He proposed last week, Hortense continued, her voice dropping to a whisper like she was sharing the world's most wonderful secret. We're going to Vegas next month for a small ceremony. Nothing fancy. At my age, you don't need all the fuss. But I'm so excited to have a family again. The word family hit me like a slap. This woman thought she was gaining a son and a mother-in-law. Instead, she was signing her own death certificate. Mrs. Miller, I said carefully, have you told anyone else about your engagement? Your family? Oh, I don't have much family left. A few cousins in Seattle, but we don't talk often. That's what makes Caio so special. He chose me when he could have anyone. Her eyes filled with tears of happiness. At 78, I never thought I'd fall in love again. When I left her house 20 minutes later, my resolve had crystallized into something harder than diamond. Hortense Miller wasn't just Caio's victim. She was an innocent woman whose only crime was being lonely and wealthy in a world full of predators. That afternoon, I called my old friend Rachel Morrison. We'd known each other for 30 years, ever since our kids were in elementary school together. Rachel worked at the Jefferson County Courthouse as a clerk in the Civil Records Division, and if anyone could help me navigate the legal system, it was her. Rachel, I need your help with something that's going to sound crazy. Honey, at our age, everything sounds crazy. What's going on? I told her everything. About the detective, about Hortense, about the medications and the engagement ring and the law office visit. Rachel listened without interrupting, making small humming sounds that told me she was processing every detail. Jesus Christ, Nusa, you're talking about attempted murder. I know, and I need to stop him before he succeeds. Okay, here's what we're going to do. First, I need you to get proof. Not detective photos. Those help, but we need something more concrete. Can you record him talking about his plans? How? Next time he comes for Sunday dinner, leave your phone recording in your pocket. Get him talking about Hortense, about the engagement, about anything that shows his real intentions. That Sunday, Caio arrived for dinner at exactly 2 p.m. like always. He brought Livia, who kissed my cheek and complimented my pot roast like the sweet girl she'd always been. As I watched her laugh at something Caio said, I realized she had no idea what her husband was planning. She was as innocent as Hortense. After dinner, while Livia was in the bathroom, I decided to take my chance. Caio, honey, Mrs. Patterson mentioned she saw you with someone. An older lady? His face went through several micro-expressions. Surprise, calculation, then that easy smile he'd perfected as a teenager. Oh, that. Yeah, I've been helping this elderly woman, Hortense. She needed some assistance with errands, organizing her medications. You know how I am with older people. I kept my voice casual, maternal. That's sweet of you. Is she paying you for your help? Caio laughed, and there was something in that laugh that made my skin crawl. Not exactly. But she's very grateful, very trusting. She depends on me for everything now. She must be quite fond of you. She is. His voice dropped to a whisper, and he leaned closer like he was sharing a secret. She trusts me completely, Mom. With her house, her money, her medications, everything, and soon. He paused, glancing toward the bathroom where Livia was. Let's just say I'm taking very good care of her. The way he said taking care of her made my blood freeze. But I kept my voice steady. She's lucky to have you. She really is. And soon, she won't have to worry about anything ever again. When they left that evening, I sat in my kitchen and listened to the recording 3 times. Caio's words were carefully chosen, vague enough to deny but clear enough for anyone who knew the context. He was planning Hortense's death, and he was enjoying the anticipation. Monday morning, I called Rachel with the recording. It's not enough for a conviction, but it's enough to start an investigation, she said. I'm going to contact someone I know in the DA's office. But Nusa, you realize what this means, right? If we're right about this, your son is going to prison for a very long time. I stared out my kitchen window at the small garden where Kaio used to help me plant tomatoes when he was 10 years old. Rachel, the son I raised, is already gone. Now I just need to stop the stranger he became. And I meant every word. Tuesday morning, Rachel called me at 7:30 a.m. with news that made my coffee taste like ash. Nusa, I talked to Assistant District Attorney Patricia Williams last night. She listened to your recording and reviewed the detective's photos. She wants to meet with you today. What did she say? She said if your suspicions are correct, we're looking at attempted murder, elder abuse, and fraud. But she also said we need more evidence before they can move. A lot more. 3 hours later, I sat in the DA's office downtown, surrounded by law books and case files, telling my story to a woman who looked young enough to be my granddaughter. Patricia Williams was sharp-eyed and serious, taking notes in a legal pad while I spoke. Mrs. Santos, based on what you've told me and the evidence you've provided, I believe your son is planning to commit what we call intimate partner homicide for financial gain. But believing it and proving it in court are two different things. What do we need? More recordings, documentation of his access to Mrs. Miller's medications, proof that he's isolated her from her family, and ideally, evidence of a direct threat. She leaned forward. Are you prepared to wear a wire when you talk to your son? The question hung in the air like smoke from a house fire. Was I prepared to betray my own child to save a stranger? Yes. That afternoon, Detective Benson fitted me with a recording device so small it looked like a button on my cardigan. Just act natural, he instructed. Get him talking about his relationship with Mrs. Miller, about their plans, about anything that shows his true intentions. What if he suspects something? Then you're in danger, Benson said bluntly. Mrs. Santos, if your son is planning to kill Mrs. Miller for her money and he thinks you're going to stop him. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Wednesday evening, I invited Kaio for dinner alone. Livia's working late at the hospital, I told him. Just us tonight. He arrived at 6 p.m. carrying a bottle of wine and wearing that easy smile that used to melt my heart. Now it made my skin crawl. As I served his favorite meal, chicken parmesan with garlic bread, I tried to remember the last time we'd been alone together like this. So, tell me about this woman you've been helping, I said as casually as I could manage. Hortense? Kaio's fork paused halfway to his mouth. What about her? Mrs. Patterson says you two seem very close. Are you dating her? He laughed, but there was something calculated in the sound. Mom, she's 78 years old. That doesn't answer my question. For a moment, his mask slipped. I saw something cold and predatory flicker across his features before the pleasant expression returned. Okay, yes, we're involved. She's lonely, she has money, and she appreciates my company. How much money? Enough. He took a sip of wine. Mom, I know how this looks, but Hortense is happy. Happier than she's been in years. I'm giving her companionship, attention, someone to take care of her in her final years. The phrase, final years, made my blood freeze. How final? Kaio shrugged with studied nonchalance. She's old. She has heart problems. Her doctor says she could go at any time. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. The thing is, Mom, she trusts me completely. She's already changed her will. When she dies, and it could be any day, everything comes to me. What about her family? What family? A few distant cousins she never talks to? Kaio's eyes glittered with something that made me nauseous. She's all alone in the world, except for me. I'm all she has. I forced myself to keep eating, to act normal, even though every word felt like a knife in my chest. And her medications? You mentioned you help her with those? Oh, that's the best part. Kaio actually smiled. She gets so confused with all her pills. Sometimes she forgets if she's taken them. Sometimes she takes them twice. Heart medication can be tricky. Too little, and it doesn't work. Too much, and... He made a gesture, like his heart stopping. It would look completely natural. My hands were shaking so badly I had to put down my fork. Kaio, what are you saying? I'm saying that old people die, Mom. It's sad, but it's natural. And when Hortense passes away, peacefully, in her sleep, from her heart condition, I'll inherit 4.8 million. Enough to take care of you, enough to give Livia the life she deserves, enough to set our whole family up for generations. The recording device felt like it was burning against my chest. My son had just confessed to planning murder, and he'd done it with the casual tone of someone discussing the weather. When do you think this will happen? I asked, hating myself for the question. Soon. Kaio reached across the table and patted my hand. Very soon. We're going to Vegas next week to get married, and after that, he shrugged. Well, the stress of a new marriage, the excitement, her fragile heart, these things happen. After he left that night, I sat in my bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left in my stomach. Then I called Detective Benson. We got it, I whispered into the phone. We got everything. Bomba. 1. The bigamy discovery. Thursday morning brought the first of 3 revelations that would shatter what remained of my faith in my son. Rachel called at 8 a.m., her voice tight with anger. Nusa, I need you to sit down. What now? I ran a background check on Kaio's marriage license with Livia. Then I cross-referenced it with Clark County, Nevada. That's where Las Vegas is. Honey, your son has already filed a marriage application with Hortense Miller. The ceremony is scheduled for next Friday. The room started spinning. But he's already married to Livia. Exactly. What your son is planning isn't just murder, it's bigamy. If this Vegas marriage goes through, he'll be legally married to 2 women at the same time. I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Does Livia know? From what I can tell, she has no idea. But here's the thing, Nusa. This actually helps our case. Bigamy is a federal crime if it crosses state lines. The FBI can get involved now. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. This time it was Ada Williams. Mrs. Santos, I've listened to your recording from last night. Combined with the bigamy evidence, we have enough to open a formal investigation. I'm contacting the FBI's white-collar crime unit today. Bomba 2. The medication dosage. That afternoon, I did something that terrified me. I went back to Hortense Miller's house. But this time, I wasn't going as Kaio's mother. I was going as someone trying to save her life. Nusa! Hortense opened the door with that same joy she'd shown before. What a lovely surprise! Come in, come in! As she led me to her sitting room, I noticed something that made my heart race. On the coffee table was a pill organizer, one of those plastic containers with compartments for each day of the week. Next to it was a bottle of heart medication. Hortense, can I ask you something about your medications? Of course, dear. Kaio is so wonderful about helping me organize them. I picked up the bottle and read the label. Digoxin, 0.255 mg. Take one daily. But when I looked at the pill organizer, each compartment contained 3 pills. Hortense, this bottle says to take 1 pill a day, but there are 3 pills in each section. She looked confused. Are there? Kaio always fills it for me. He said my doctor increased the dosage because my heart has been acting up. When did you last see your doctor? Oh, it's been months. Kaio said he could handle my medication adjustments since he works in insurance and understands medical things. My blood turned to ice water. 3 times the normal dose of a heart medication. For an elderly woman, it would look exactly like a heart attack. Hortense, I think you should call your doctor and confirm this dosage. Oh, but Kaio said, please, as a favor to me, call your doctor. 15 minutes later, Dr. Robert Chen was on the phone, his voice sharp with concern. Mrs. Miller, I never authorized any increase in your digoxin. Who told you to triple your dose? That amount could kill you. Hortense's face went white. She looked at me with dawning horror. Kaio told me you said to increase it. I've never spoken to anyone named Kaio. Mrs. Miller, you need to come in immediately for blood work. If you've been taking 3 times your normal dose, you could be in serious danger. Bomba 3. The forged documents. Friday brought Detective Benson to my door with a manila folder that would change everything. Mrs. Santos, I've been investigating Kaio's visits to the law firm. I have a contact there who was able to get me copies of the documents he filed. He spread the papers across my kitchen table. Power of attorney forms, a new will for Hortense Miller, and something that made me gasp out loud. A document claiming that Hortense had no living relatives. But she does have relatives, I said. Cousins in Seattle. Exactly. Your son lied on these legal documents. He claimed she was alone in the world, so there would be no one to contest the will when she dies. Benson pointed to a signature at the bottom of each page. And look at this. The signature read, Hortense Miller, but it looked nothing like the handwriting I'd seen on the thank you note she'd written me. This signature was shaky, uncertain, like someone had been guiding her hand. He made her sign these when she was confused, I whispered, or he forged them entirely. Either way, it's fraud. That afternoon, I made the hardest phone call of my life. Using information from Detective Benson, I contacted Hortense's cousin Margaret in Seattle. Mrs. Chen, you don't know me, but I'm calling about your cousin Hortense Miller in Denver. Hortense? Is she all right? I haven't heard from her in months. She's in danger. There's a man who's been manipulating her, and he's planning to kill her for her money. The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Margaret spoke, her voice shaking. Who is this man? My son. Bomba 4, the life insurance policy. Saturday morning brought the revelation that transformed this from attempted murder into something even more sinister. Ada Williams called with information that made me feel like I was falling into an abyss. Mrs. Santos, the FBI's investigation has uncovered something else. 3 weeks ago, your son purchased a $500,000 life insurance policy on Hortense Miller. Is that legal? If she signed the application and agreed to it, yes. But here's the problem. The signature on the insurance application doesn't match any of her other signatures. And the medical exam required for a policy that large? It was never done. What does that mean? It means your son forged her signature on a $500,000 life insurance policy, naming himself as the beneficiary, combined with the $8 million inheritance and her real estate holdings. He stands to gain over $5 million from her death. $5 million. My son was planning to murder an innocent woman for $5 million. There's more, Williams continued. The insurance policy has a double indemnity clause. If Hortense dies from an accident or unexpected heart failure within the first year, the payout doubles to $1 million. He's been planning this for a long time. Months, at least. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to commit murder for financial gain. The final evidence. Sunday afternoon, I did something that still haunts my dreams. I invited Kaio and Livia for one last family dinner, knowing it would probably be our last meal together as a family. Livia was as sweet as always, bringing me flowers and helping in the kitchen. But watching her laugh and joke with Kaio, knowing what I knew, was like watching someone play with a poisonous snake. After dinner, while Livia was loading the dishwasher, I pulled Kaio aside. The Vegas wedding is this week? He nodded, that cold calculation flickering behind his eyes. Friday afternoon. Simple ceremony at a chapel. And then we'll see what happens. He leaned closer. Mom, I want you to know that when this is all over, I'm going to take care of you. You'll never have to worry about money again. What if something goes wrong? What if she gets suspicious? Kaio's smile was the most chilling thing I'd ever seen. She won't. She trusts me completely. And even if she did get suspicious, what could she do? She's 78 years old, she's alone, and everyone thinks she's just a confused old woman who fell for a younger man. But what if her family? What family? He actually laughed. I've made sure she's completely isolated. No one knows about our relationship except you, and no one would believe her if she tried to tell them I was dangerous. I'm her loving fiancé who takes care of her medications and handles her affairs. If something happens to her, it'll just be a tragedy. An old woman whose heart gave out after the excitement of a new marriage. That night, after they left, I sat in my living room and listened to the recording for the 4th time. My son's voice, cold and calculating, planning the murder of an innocent woman with the same tone he might use to plan a vacation. The next morning, I called Ada Williams, Detective Benson, and Agent Sarah Richardson from the FBI. It was time to stop my son before he could kill Hortense Miller. We have enough evidence now, Agent Richardson told me over the phone. Attempted murder, elder abuse, fraud, bigamy, and insurance fraud. We're going to arrest him before he can get to Vegas. When? Tomorrow morning. We'll coordinate with Denver PD and take him at his office. As I hung up the phone, I realized I felt no sadness, no regret, no second thoughts. The man I'd raised was gone, replaced by a predator who wore his face. and tomorrow that predator would face justice. But first, I had one more call to make. Hortense, it's Noosa. I need you to listen to me very carefully. You're in danger, and we need to get you somewhere safe. Tuesday morning, November 15th, 2024, at exactly 9:47 a.m., I watched my son's life implode in a sterile conference room at the FBI field office in downtown Denver. The room smelled like industrial coffee and fear. I sat at one end of a long metal table, surrounded by people whose job it was to put criminals behind bars. Agent Sarah Richardson, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with steel-gray hair. Ada Patricia Williams, her legal pad covered in notes that would send my son to prison. Detective Benson, the man whose investigation had started this nightmare. And across from me, in handcuffs, sat Kayo. He'd been arrested at his insurance office 3 hours earlier. The FBI had coordinated with Denver PD to take him quietly, professionally, without the drama of a public scene. But now, sitting in this room with fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and the weight of evidence stacked against him, there was nowhere left to hide. Mr. Santos, Agent Richardson began, her voice crisp and businesslike. You've been read your Miranda rights. You've declined legal representation at this time. Do you understand why you're here? Kayo looked confused, almost innocent. It was an expression I'd seen 1,000 times growing up. The same face he'd made when I'd caught him breaking something or lying about homework. But this wasn't about a broken vase or a missed assignment. This was about murder. I honestly have no idea, he said, his voice carrying just the right note of bewildered concern. There must be some mistake. Agent Richardson opened a thick manila folder and spread its contents across the table. Photos of Kayo with Hortense, copies of the forged legal documents, the marriage application from Las Vegas, the life insurance policy, and at the center of it all, a small digital recorder. Mr. Santos, we're going to play some audio recordings for you. I want you to listen carefully and tell me if you recognize the voice. She pressed play. Kayo's voice filled the room, crystal clear and unmistakable. Heart medication can be tricky. Too little and it doesn't work, too much and... The sound of him mimicking a heart stopping. It would look completely natural. I watched my son's face as he heard his own words played back to him. For just a moment, his mask slipped completely. His eyes went wide, his mouth opened slightly, and he looked directly at me with an expression of pure betrayal. You recorded me, he whispered. I saved a woman's life, I replied. Agent Richardson continued playing the recording. Kayo's voice confessing to planning Hortense's death, his casual discussion of her inheritance, his prediction that she would die very soon after their Vegas wedding. When the recording ended, the silence in the room was absolute. Even the fluorescent lights seemed to stop buzzing. Mr. Santos, Ada Williams said, that recording was made at your mother's house 3 days ago. Your voice is clearly identifiable. You're discussing plans to kill Hortense Miller by overdosing her with heart medication and making it look like natural causes. That's not... Kayo started, then stopped. His lawyer's training from years of selling insurance kicked in. I want to speak to an attorney. Of course, Agent Richardson said. But before we arrange that, there are some other people who want to see you. The conference room door opened, and Detective Benson walked in escorting 2 people I didn't recognize. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and worried eyes, and a younger man in an expensive suit. Mr. Santos, the woman said, her voice shaking with rage. I'm Margaret Chen, Hortense Miller's cousin, and this is David Chen, my son and Mrs. Miller's attorney. Kayo's face went white. I don't know who you are. Really? Margaret stepped closer to the table. Because according to the legal documents you filed, Hortense has no living relatives. You told the court she was completely alone in the world. David Chen, the attorney, opened his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. Mr. Santos, these are the documents you filed claiming power of attorney over my great-aunt's affairs. Documents that state she has no family, no one to look out for her interests. He spread the papers across the table next to the FBI's evidence. The problem is, every signature on these documents is forged. We've had a handwriting expert analyze them. None of these signatures match my great-aunt's actual handwriting. Kayo was looking around the room like a trapped animal. This is ridiculous. Hortense and I are in love. We're getting married. Everything I did was with her consent. Including the life insurance policy? Ada Williams asked. She slid another document across the table. This is a $500,000 life insurance policy you took out on Mrs. Miller 3 weeks ago, naming yourself as the sole beneficiary. She agreed to that. Mr. Santos, Agent Richardson interjected, the required medical examination for a policy of this size was never conducted. The signature on the application is forged, and according to the insurance company's records, Mrs. Miller was never contacted to verify any of the information on this policy. The walls were closing in. I could see Kaio's mind racing, trying to find an escape route that didn't exist. His eyes kept darting between the evidence on the table and the faces of the people surrounding him. There's more, Detective Benson said. He placed a small plastic bag on the table containing white pills. These are the pills we found in Mrs. Miller's weekly pill organizer. They're supposed to be 0.25 milligrams of digoxin, taken once daily for her heart condition. He paused for effect. These pills are 0.75 milligrams each, and you had her taking 3 per day. That's 9 times her prescribed dosage. For someone her age, with her heart condition, that amount would cause cardiac arrest within days. And here's the beautiful part, Ada Williams added. When Mrs. Miller saw her real doctor yesterday for emergency blood work, we discovered she already has dangerously high levels of digoxin in her system. A few more days at the dosage you were giving her, and she would have died of what appeared to be natural heart failure. Kaio finally exploded. She's an old woman. She was going to die anyway. I gave her companionship, attention, someone to care about her in her final years. For $5 million, I said quietly. He whirled around to face me, his eyes blazing with anger. You have no idea what you've done, do you? Do you know how much money we're talking about? This could have set our entire family up for generations by murdering an innocent woman. She's 78 years old. She's alone. Her own family never visits her. Margaret Chen stepped forward, her voice trembling with rage. I live in Seattle. I called Hortense every month until 6 months ago when she suddenly stopped returning my calls. I flew out here twice to check on her, but she was never home. Now I know why. You were controlling her schedule, isolating her from everyone who cared about her. And her loneliness, David Chen added. She has friends at her church, neighbors who've known her for 20 years, a book club she's belonged to for a decade. But according to several of them, she suddenly stopped participating in everything around the same time she met you. The evidence was overwhelming, but what destroyed me wasn't the legal details or the financial crimes. It was watching my son's complete lack of remorse. Even caught red-handed, even facing decades in prison, he was angry that his plan had been discovered, not sorry that he'd tried to kill someone. Mr. Santos, Agent Richardson said, based on the evidence we've presented today, you're being charged with attempted murder in the first degree, elder abuse, fraud, forgery, bigamy, and conspiracy to commit insurance fraud. She opened another folder. The attempted murder charge alone carries a sentence of 16 to 48 years in Colorado State Prison. The federal charges for the insurance fraud and bigamy could add another 20 years. Kaio's face crumpled. For the first time since we'd entered the room, he looked scared. Mom, he said, turning to me with tears in his eyes. Mom, please. You can't let them do this to me. I'm your son. I looked at this man who shared my DNA, who'd grown up in my house, who I'd raised to be better than this. And I felt nothing but cold determination. My son died when he decided to murder an innocent woman for money, I said. You're just a stranger who looks like him. The words hit him like a physical blow. He actually recoiled, pressing back against his chair like I'd slapped him. For 43 years, I protected you from every consequence, every mistake, every hard truth, I continued. I gave you everything I had, including my belief that you were fundamentally good. But you chose this. You chose to become a predator who exploits elderly women. You chose to forge documents and plan murder. You chose to betray every value I tried to teach you. I stood up, my voice growing stronger with each word. Do you want to know what hurts the most? It's not that you planned to kill Hortense, it's that you enjoyed it. You sat in my kitchen and smiled while you told me how you were going to stop her heart with medication. You were proud of how clever you thought you were. Kaio was crying now, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity, of a criminal caught in the act and facing the consequences of his choices. "You want to know what Hortense told me when I called to warn her?" I asked. She said, "Thank God Caio has such a wonderful mother. I was so looking forward to you being my family." She was excited to have me as a daughter-in-law, Caio. She thought she was gaining a son and a mother. Instead, you were planning to kill her for her money. "That's enough," Ada Williams said gently. "Mrs. Santos, you've been through enough today." But I wasn't finished. I pulled out my phone and showed Caio a photo I'd taken the day before. It was Hortense in her hospital bed, surrounded by machines monitoring her heart function, with Margaret and David Chen holding her hands. "This is what your harmless old woman looks like now," I said. "She's in intensive care because of the poison you've been feeding her for weeks. The doctors say if we'd waited even 3 more days, she would have died." For the first time, Caio looked away. He couldn't meet my eyes or look at the photo. The rest of the proceeding was a blur of legal terminology and paperwork. Caio was formally charged, denied bail due to flight risk, and remanded to federal custody pending trial. As they led him away in shackles, he looked back at me one last time. "I'll never forgive you for this," he said. "I'll never forgive myself for raising you," I replied. And then he was gone. 6 months later, in May 2025, I stood in the sunny kitchen of my new cottage in Boulder, watching hummingbirds dance around the feeder outside my window. The morning light streamed through lace curtains, illuminating a life I'd never imagined possible at 69 years old. My hair was different now, shorter, styled in soft silver waves that framed my face instead of the tight gray bun I'd worn for decades. I'd traded my shapeless cardigans for a cheerful yellow sundress that actually fit my body. And for the first time in years, I stood up straight, my shoulders back, my chin lifted with a confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. The woman in the mirror was someone I barely recognized, but someone I was learning to love. "Nusa," called a voice from my front garden. "The roses are blooming." I smiled and walked outside to join Eleanor Hutchins, my 74-year-old neighbor who'd become one of my closest friends. She was kneeling beside the white rose bush we'd planted together in March, her weathered hands gentle with the delicate blooms. "They're beautiful," I said, admiring the perfect white petals. "Just like Hortense said they would be." Eleanor stood up, brushing soil from her gardening gloves. "How is she doing? Still coming to the support group meetings?" "Every Tuesday. She's become quite the advocate for elder abuse prevention." I paused, thinking about the remarkable transformation I'd witnessed in Hortense Miller over the past 6 months. She told me yesterday that testifying against Caio was the first time in years she'd felt truly powerful. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Caio was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without the possibility of parole for 20 years. The judge had been particularly harsh because of what she called the calculated cruelty of exploiting an elderly victim's loneliness and trust. Livia had divorced him 2 months into his pretrial detention. She'd moved back to her hometown in Nebraska, taking nothing but her personal belongings and a profound sense of betrayal that I understood all too well. She'd written me a letter afterward. "Mrs. Santos, I can't imagine how you found the strength to turn in your own son. I lived with him for 8 years and never saw the monster you discovered. Thank you for saving Hortense's life, and thank you for saving me from spending the rest of my life married to a murderer I never really knew." The letter was pinned to my refrigerator, a reminder that sometimes the hardest choices lead to the most necessary outcomes. "Earth to Nusa," Eleanor said with a laugh. "You were 1,000,000 miles away." Just thinking about the foundation meeting this afternoon. The Hortense Miller Foundation for Elder Protection had been established with $2 million from Hortense's estate, money she designated specifically for preventing crimes like the one Caio had attempted against her. I served as the executive director, using my experience to help train social workers, law enforcement, and healthcare providers to recognize the signs of elder abuse and financial exploitation. We'd already helped investigate 17 cases in Colorado, resulting in 12 arrests and the recovery of over $3.8 million in stolen assets. But more importantly, we'd saved lives. That afternoon, I drove to our foundation offices in downtown Boulder for our monthly board meeting. The building was small but bright, with large windows and motivational posters featuring elderly people living active, independent lives. Nusa, Dr. Patricia Williams, the former ADA who'd prosecuted Caio, stood up as I entered the conference room. She'd left the district attorney's office to become our legal counsel, dedicating her career to protecting vulnerable adults. How are the speaking engagements going? Wonderfully overwhelming, I said, taking my seat at the head of the table. We have requests from 12 states now. Apparently, the story of a mother who stopped her own son from committing murder resonates with a lot of people. Around the table sat an impressive group of allies who'd emerged from the ashes of my family's destruction. Detective Benson, now our chief investigator. Agent Richardson, who consulted on federal cases. Margaret Chen, Hortense's cousin, who managed our victim support services. And Hortense herself, radiant in a pale blue suit, serving as our spokesperson and primary advocate. Before we discuss new cases, Hortense said, I want to share some news. The documentary about our story has been picked up by Netflix. They want to call it The Mother's Choice, a true crime story of family, betrayal, and justice. The room erupted in excited chatter. A major streaming platform wanted to tell our story, which meant reaching millions of people with information that could prevent elder abuse and financial exploitation. There's more, Hortense continued. They want to donate 50% of the profits to our foundation. We're looking at potentially several $100,000 in additional funding. As the meeting progressed, I found myself marveling at the woman Hortense had become. 6 months ago, she'd been a lonely widow, isolated and vulnerable, desperate for companionship. Now she was a fierce advocate, using her experience to protect others and her wealth to fund systemic change. Nusa, she said as the meeting wound down, walk with me to my car? Outside, in the warm May sunshine, Hortense took my arm as we walked slowly to her silver Mercedes, the same car I'd seen Caio help her into months ago, when I thought he was being kind instead of calculating. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. I know this has been incredibly difficult for you. Losing your son, watching him go to prison, dealing with all the media attention. It was the right thing to do. Yes, but that doesn't make it easy. She stopped walking and turned to face me. Nusa, you saved my life. But more than that, you gave me purpose. For the first time since my husband died, I feel like my life has meaning again. Tears pricked my eyes. You've given me the same gift, Hortense. Purpose, friendship, a reason to keep going. Do you ever regret it? Turning him in? I thought about the question I'd been asked by reporters, therapists, and friends dozens of times over the past 6 months. I regret that I raised a son capable of what he planned to do. I regret that I didn't see the signs earlier. But do I regret stopping him from murdering you? Never. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea, watching the sun set over the Rocky Mountains. My phone buzzed with a text message from Margaret Chen. Nusa, thought you'd want to know. Hortense just told me she's leaving her entire estate to the foundation when she passes away. She says it's the best way to make sure her money helps people instead of attracting predators. You've created something beautiful from something horrible. I smiled, feeling a peace I hadn't experienced in decades. The son I'd raised was gone, locked away for the rest of his productive life. But in his place, I'd found a new family of people dedicated to protecting the vulnerable and seeking justice for the exploited. My name is Nusa Santos. I'm 69 years old. And I learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no to someone you've always said yes to. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who stands up for what's right when everything is on the line. And sometimes the most important choice you'll ever make is choosing a stranger's life over your own child's freedom.